we're back home. So, yeah, we had a really great week up at the cabin, and as always, I am filming this right as it's coming to you all on my lunch break on Monday, so you will see this later on today. But I wanted to sort of wrap up the week and kind of take you through all of the making. I did a lot, so I think you guys got a really good vlog in there, although I did cut down quite a bit. It could have been a bit longer, but you know, I think 10 minutes is a good amount of time. And so now I'm going to wrap up. I'm surrounded by everything. So now I'm going to wrap up what I got up to during the week and what I actually ended up finishing. So as a reminder from last week's episode, my goal for this week was to finish the Wisteria Bloom socks for my mom, finish the relaxed tee for my mom, sew my Wolfwork dress, sew my Emerson pants, and get started on my Sweet Shop blanket, the 5th row of my Sweet Shop blanket. I also wanted to sort of just get to my spinning as it is Tour de Fleece as well. So I will go ahead and sort of split everything up into the sections. So knitting, sewing, spinning, and we will wrap up for the week with next week's or this week's goals, but next week's video's goals, which I really haven't thought about. So we will think about those on the fly. So first things first, for knitting, I did manage to finish both of the knit items that I wanted to finish. So the first is the relaxed tee for my mom. So it is fully finished. All of the ends are woven in. And so now I just have to block it and take FO pictures and hope that she loves it. I will talk more about the knitting experience and all that kind of stuff in the regular podcast. But as a reminder, this is the Relaxed Tee by Amy Scher, and I knit this in Purl Soho Cotton Pure, which I am a Purl Soho affiliate. So if you click on the link in the description below, you can support the channel if you want to pick up any of their yarns. So I'm really excited about this, really excited to have her wear it. And the the theme of this week was measurement snafus, because as I was going through the body, I was like realizing like, this is a lot of yarn, or this is not using up a lot of yarn, because this is how much I have left of the cone, which is about just over 700 grams, but that also includes the actual cone itself. And so what happened was, when I was looking at the pattern, or the yarn for the pattern, I was deciding between oleander, which is another plant-based fiber from Purl Soho, and the cotton pure. And so when I was doing sort of the back and forth, I figured out how many I needed of each, depending on which we went with. And when we went with the cotton pure, I had in my mind that I needed 6 skeins, which was the amount I would have needed if I'd gone with the oleander base. And so with the cotton pure, I technically only needed 4 skeins. So it really didn't necessarily work out in my favor to get a cone, but now I have a cone and I will be using it for other things. So yeah, that's what happens when you're kind of looking at multiple yarns and all of that to see what's going to work for you. Going into the next finished object, I did finish off the socks, and the lighting is not the best. Oh, I think the blinds are closed behind you all, which is making it worse. But I did finish the second sock for my mom. And again, I will be doing all the details in the podcast, but these are the Wisteria Bloom socks, also by Amy Scher, and these are actually available as a free pattern on the blog, as well as a paid pattern if you purchase sort of the ad-free PDF version. Okay, I went ahead and opened up the blinds behind you all and hoping that that helps with some of the lighting. But this weekend this is my little sock project bag that I like to have because it fits in my sling bag really well. And it's just a Cavallini & Co. pouch. I have a few of these. You can pick them up at like Paper Source or Barnes& & Noble. But I had finished my first cafe sock that I am knitting out of Woolberry Fiber Co. And so I don't know that I mentioned that I took these up with me, but I did take just the main color up with me in case I got finished with the first sock during any car knitting. And sure enough, I finished the first sock probably like within the first day of car knitting. And then I started the second sock. And then I ended up finishing the leg of the second sock during additional car knitting time. So then I was kicking myself in the butt that I didn't bring my contrast color. But I did start on my second cafe sock. So this will be my commuting knitting this week. I will hopefully be able to finish up this sock and get a little closer to my goal because I'm very far behind my goal of 24 socks for the year. And then the next project we talked about was the campus cardi, which I'm holding in my redesign project bag. And I was able to do tons of this. I was able to fully finish my first skein. So I'm alternating skeins for this. This is Newburgh Yarn Co. Their British wool base, which is a BFL Massam. And so this is the color Coleman Red. And so I am alternating. So what I did was I knit the ribbing just in one of the skeins, and then I started alternating once I started the stockinette. And I was able to finish the first skein with this much left over at the end of my row. So I was able to finish the repeat and get back to the beginning where I could pick up the next one. Not that it matters because this is non-superwash, so I just fully intend to spit splice it. That said, because I was really excited to sort of finish that one skein, I just kept knitting without measuring. And so I did technically knit a 1/4 of an inch longer on the body than I needed to. And at first I was like, it's fine. I'm just going to leave it. It's only a 1/4 of an inch. But I'm actually going to go ahead and rip back those last 2 rows that I knit with that first skein, because now that I'm at the point where I'm going to split for the front and back and join in a new skein, although these were all dyed at the same time, so they should all be the same dye lot, I just want to be safe and still continue to alternate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip back those 2 rounds. I should be able to finish the first front completely in the second skein and have enough of the second skein left over to use it for the back to blend in a new yarn. And then so for the front, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip back the other front, I should say. I'm going to rip back the 2 rounds and then blend in the last bit of the first ball into the new ball. So that way, just in case there are any weirdness with dye lots or anything like that, I don't have any weird striping. So I guess that's another goal for the week. So one goal for the week will be to finish the second cafe sock, and then the second goal for my knitting will be to finish the fronts. I think that's reasonable for me to do for the week. So just the fronts, the front, left, and back on the campus cardi. And I feel like I'm zooming along, but we gotta cut the talking sections short so that you all can enjoy the vlog sections more. But the last knit goal was to get a head start on the 5th row of my sweet shop blanket. So from last time, I had estimated that if I knit 2, 3, and 3, or 3, 3, and 2, or some combination of that, I should be able to finish the entire row by the end of the month. And that's sort of number of squares per week. And so I am just about done with the second square here. So for this week, I think I'm going to try to go for finishing this one and then finishing an additional 3 squares if I can. These are really great because each full square takes me about an hour and a half, but each triangle that makes up a square takes me 45 minutes, which is about an episode. So it's really easy to just pick up and knit, and then put back down. As long as I finish a whole triangle or a whole square, it's really easy to pick up and put down. In this case, I'm not quite finished with the square, but I can definitely go ahead and finish that off. And I guess if you want to sort of see the colors as I've laid them out for this week and you haven't watched last week's episode, you can definitely go ahead and check that out. So the last bit in the knitting session that I have to share with you is you will have seen that I did get to have breakfast with Kim of Newburgh Yarn Co. We went to Phoenicia on Friday, which was the day before my birthday, and she is like so sweet, so kind, and we've just become the best of friends. And we're just chatting about life and catching up and getting to see each other outside of like the festival sort of environment. We got to hang out a little bit at Flock during the garden party, but other than that, it's really a lot of our hanging out has been during festivals, either while she's vending or while we're both walking around and run into each other at a festival, which is hard to really catch up with folks. So it was really nice to really spend some dedicated time together. And she very, very kindly gave me a cute little gift for my birthday. So this is gifted, but it was a birthday gift. It was not, with the intention of me showing it here, but of course I'm going to show it because I love Kim and everything she does. But she gifted me the little mini set of the Vintage Campout collection, which is the same collection that I bought the British wool from. And so it's so funny because when I had placed that order, I had been eyeing the mini set as well because I picked up one of Kim's minis from last year's Rhinebeck, and I was eyeing the minis and I was just trying to be good and not do it. And so I didn't buy them. And then she gifted me the little mini set. And so the lighting isn't great, so I'll definitely be featuring them in the podcast, but this is the little minis on her soft sock base, which is an 85% superwash merino, 15% nylon. And so each of them is 87 yards or 20 grams. And so I'm really excited to knit up probably some socks. I don't know what else, maybe a little, I think this would be a really cute little like stripy kerchief or something, like a little campy kerchief would be really cute from this as well. So we will see what I get up to with these little minis. So moving along to the sewing, before I show you the sewing project that I did get to, spoiler alert, I did not finish or even start the Emerson pants. Will I ever get them done? Who knows? They are fully cut out, so eventually. Probably, hopefully before the month ends, because that is one of my goals this month. But what I did do was I did get to the local fabric shop. There is a fabric shop in our town, and it is primarily geared toward quilting. So I went in to pick up some muslin because before I left for the trip, one of my thoughts was if I spent too much time and I needed extra time, sort of too much time indoors and I needed extra time to do something, was that I could sketch out and potentially toile for some falconer pants that I want to make. And so I took up my pattern, I took up my tissue paper, but when I was looking through my fabric bin, I couldn't see where I had put some muslin, or like I couldn't find a big enough piece of muslin that would be appropriate for making the pants. So I decided to stop into the fabric store. And so this is like one of sort of the main unfortunate consequences of there not being any more Joann is, it's not as easy to just hop into somewhere and buy some inexpensive muslin. But so I went in knowing that although they're primarily a quilting shop, I know that they would have some muslin. And I don't believe that they have any other type of apparel fabric at all. But I did pick some up while I was there. So I just picked up 3 yards of just regular muslin. And what I like to do is as I trace out my pattern, I will also trace out the grain line so that once I'm done toiling a pattern, I will actually reuse the muslin for lining for my project bags. And so, because I was in a fabric store and there's pretty fabric, I decided to pick up a couple of small bits of fabric to make a little quilted project bag. And so these are the fabrics that I picked up. So not sure when I'll get around to these. I am thinking that I'm going to make kind of the quilt block out of these 4 fabrics. And I do have some Fabulism there. I think it's just called their Sprout Woven coming in like the color cream. And I've used that one for a hinterland dress in the past so that I can use that as the background for the quilt square. And then I got this really pretty fabric for the back of the bag. So I'm hoping to get to that within the next couple of weeks and make myself a little project bag. It's been a while since I sewed a project bag. And as I've been kind of taking my knitting places, I've realized that all of my whips are in their dedicated project bags, and I'm quickly running out of project bags for new projects. So definitely going to have a project bag in my future. But lest we forget, we must get to the pièce de résistance, which is my wool furk dress, which is my birthday dress. So of course, I'm not going to get the whole dress in here, but you will have seen sort of footage of me wearing it in the vlog portion, and I'll also insert a picture here as well. If you haven't noticed, I also have a Threadloop account, which I do link to in my description, so you can check out more information on this pattern and sort of my modifications there as well. But I did manage to finish the dress and do some really great pattern matching, if I say so myself. Not perfect, but pretty decent. Some of the places where definitely went really well, like one of my shoulders, my right shoulder, is really well. And then, ironically enough, the facing, I didn't mean to have my facing line up perfectly, but pretty good at pattern matching there. My other shoulder was like meh. The one thing that I did was my sleeves, obviously can't really pattern match sleeves. My sleeves definitely match each other, but what I did when I laid out my pattern piece, I didn't realize that the grain line, or I didn't think through the fact that the grain line is offset from the center notch. So when I laid out my first sleeve pattern, so when you pattern match, you sort of lay out your first pattern, you cut out your paper pattern fabric, and then you mirror your fabric on top of your other fabric to make sure that they line up. And so what happened was when I laid out the pattern piece, I lined up my center of my plaid here against the center of the sleeve pattern piece, which was the grain line. However, the notch was offset a little bit, and really I should have centered my plaid like against the notch, because the notch would have been where my seam was. So even though the sleeves match each other, they are slightly off center, where you can see that my seam is right here. And had I centered my pattern piece to the notch instead of the center of the pattern piece, it would have been perfectly centered. So that's just something for me to think about if I make the sleeve version again out of a check fabric. Okay, road noise. Other than that, though, I did really well, especially because this is French seamed. I'm losing my words. This is French seamed. And so that's one thing that I was thinking about after the fact as I was sewing this up, is that I probably should have just sewn it regular and serged my seams just to make sure that everything was extra matchy. Because of course, when you French seam, you go ahead and you sew everything wrong sides together and then right sides together. So my seams aren't like 100% perfectly matching, but they are very close, that you would have to be super close to me and really paying attention and probably buying me dinner to realize that my seams don't align perfectly in the center. Another thing is that this pattern, this fabric is wide enough. I probably could have just eliminated the seam allowance and just cut it flat, but I just went ahead and did it this way anyway, the way that the pattern is written anyway. And so I did opt for inseam pockets, and I will put in the tutorial that I used for inseam pockets on French seamed projects in the description. And so the way that I pattern matched the body is I actually focused on pattern matching across the sides from the bottom up, because I knew that because of the bust dart, you would lose the pattern matching in between the top back and the top front of the dress. So I did manage to line up my plaids all the way up and down the side up until the pocket piece, and then they sort of stray a little bit because of the bust darts. Okay, I had to switch out the battery, and I'm going to try to wrap this up really fast so that my camera doesn't overheat. But the last section is the spinning. And so now that I'm back home, I did want to show you all the skein that I talked about in last week's episode that I wrapped up before Tour de Fleece. And so this is a combo spin that I did with rhubarb crumble with some generic comb top. And I talk about it a little bit more in last week's episode. But for this week, for spinning, I did my 2 challenge days, and that's about it. So I'm about 4 days behind on Tour de Fleece. The Wolfrock pattern took a lot more time and energy than I thought it would. And then once it was time to sort of sit down, or I could have time to sit down and spin, I would have started my project and not gotten to a really good finishing point where I could have taken the bobbin off. And of course I could have just like ripped my fiber off, but I kind of just wanted to have the continuity. So all that I did were my 2 challenge days, and then I'm about 4 days behind on my spinning. As I'm filming this, I believe today is a rest day, so I will be spinning today though, because obviously I've rested for a few days. What I'll probably do is I've been aiming for about 20 to 30 minutes a day of spinning. I'll probably just do a morning and an evening session to catch up on my spinning progress. And not that I'm like shooting for any particular number of yards or anything like that, but I am hoping to sort of finish the majority of the spinning for the project that I am working on during Tour de Fleece. But I will show you my challenge spin, which was my first long draw. And so I did finish my first bobbin. And this is from a bat that I purchased from Amy Scher, and I lost some of my fiber. This is, I believe, a CVM Romandale named London. I think that's right. And what I love about Amy's bats is that when they card the bats, they already provide it to you in 2 sheets, so you don't have to weigh them. So it's already weighed out for you. And so I spun up the first sheet. This is what each sheet looks like. And I just tore it in a zigzag to create my roving, and I spun it, and I'm really excited. Long draw is definitely a challenge. It's definitely interesting to get used to. It's much faster for sure. That I will say is definitely much faster than worsted. Obviously, I would not have been able to spin 50 grams in 2 days worsted for sure without injuring myself. But I think just getting used to the positioning and sort of the body positioning. The other thing is I have some physical limitations, and so I already kind of knew, just sort of looking at videos on how to do it and how I would want to do it, that I will likely either need to get a Saxony single treadle wheel or an e-spinner to do significant amounts of long draw. On a double treadle, and specifically a castle double treadle, it is a little difficult for me, and some of my limitations that I have going on in my upper back and neck to be able to spin long draw very comfortably. But it was definitely a learning experience. It's definitely a lot of fun. I want to do a video just on Tour de Fleece and also my spinning so far and kind of some things to learn. Long draw actually does come easily to me in some respects, in others it doesn't. And so kind of just want to sort of chat through that in more detail in a separate video. But I was able to finish the first half of the bat. And then what I did do is I did actually steam out my yarn jam. So before I knit my braids, I steam them out, which is something that I learned from Christopher of Flannels and Pearls, and he's completely changed my life when he taught me this. And so I did steam out my yarn jam braid that I'm going to be spinning up for the rest of Tour de Fleece. So now the goal for this week is to just break this in half, and I'm going to do the first half of my fractal spin where I'm just spinning across the top for the first half, and then I will decide on how many times to divide the second half. Some of these sections are looking pretty short, so that's why I kind of also want to spin the first half where I'm spinning across the top first to see how long of the striping I get, because some of these sections are pretty short, and this isn't a fractal dyed bat, so keep that in mind. So it's because some of the sections are a little bit shorter, I'm thinking at the most I would divide up the second half 3 times, maybe just even twice, so that I don't lose a lot of that color, especially because I'm introducing a third ply, which is a solid color. So I'm thinking that I'll probably do just a 1 and 2 ratio for my fractal spin, so that my striping is still pretty and my barber poling is still pretty, striking is not the word, but apparent, like there's enough contrast there. That is a lot of stuff. But that's what happens when you are off for a week and you can craft and do pretty much just crafting. I did do some ASM work as well, so there's still some work that happened in there, and I did some knit and grace work as well. But for the most part, I just spent the week crafting, and because the weather wasn't great, I unfortunately spent a lot of it inside. So although I was happy that I got to do some hiking and some exploring as well. So for this week, I guess we shall come up with the goals on the fly, and then I can leave you. I definitely want to work on the cafe socks. I don't know that I will finish them. No, I lied. I'm not commuting this week. I will not be working on the cafe socks. I am not commuting this week, so those socks will be put to the side. So for the sweets goals from a knitting perspective, I want to finish the first 5 squares of my blanket. So of the 5th row of my blanket. So again, that's going to be finishing the second and then knitting 3 more. And then I want to knit the fronts, so both right and left of my cardigan. Then I think I should probably start my second cardigan. I think this will be a good week to start my second cardigan. And so for this week, I will go ahead and start the Calm Down cardigan. And I think this will be a good point too, because if I get through the fronts fairly quickly, both of the cardigans are actually knit on the same size needles. I shall be able to put those on holders and then switch out those needles to then work the top down section on the Calm Down cardigan. I think that'll be good. So 5 squares on the blanket, or first 5 squares should be done. So 3 and a little bit more to go. Finish the fronts on the campus cardi and start my Calm Down cardigan. So there'll be my knitting goals. My spinning goals we just addressed. I would like to finish the first half of my fractal spin. And then sewing, I guess, will I ever sew the Emerson pants? That will be the mystery. What do you guys think? Do you think I'll finish the Emerson pants? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe this is the week. Well, I hope that you've been enjoying this series so far. I will leave you here, and I guess I will see you next week with an update on what I've actually been doing over the next week or so. Until then, be sure to take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you next time. Bye.